SuperCollider has this diverse library of patterns for expressing all kinds of sequences. Common examples include pseq, prand, pwhite, many others. Now, by design, patterns are language side, and although it is often useful to have this separation from the audio server, it does mean that we can't plug them directly into a SynthDef, as you can see here. However, there's a category of demand UGens that produce pattern-like behavior. Most of them actually have nearly the same name as their pattern counterparts. These demand classes can be incorporated into a UGen function and applied directly to audio and control signals. They're kind of like sequencer modules on an analog synth, so they're a good choice for arpeggiators, rhythm generators, and just about anything sequential in nature. So here's a basic filtered Sawtooth instrument. For this tutorial, I actually want to think in terms of musical scale, so I'm going to load the Dorian mode into a buffer, which is just the integers 0, 2, 3, 5, 7, 9, 10. And use degree to key from mini tutorial 6, basically just retrieves buffer values by index, allowing us to use consecutive integers to traverse the scale. And then here's a simple application of demand UGens. We start with an impulse generator as a basic timing signal. Demand receives those triggers. It's also got a reset parameter, which I'm going to temporarily ignore. And then some demand-based pattern, like dseq, for example, will step through its values in order. Mouse X and mouse Y to control impulse rate and cutoff frequency for a little interactive fun, and also to help understand what's going on a little bit more clearly. Tduty is similar to demand, but interprets its first argument as a duration instead of expecting a trigger signal. That's the same thing we heard a moment ago, but the duration doesn't have to be static. In fact, it can be any signal, like an LFO, or even another demand-style pattern, like drand. The reset argument can be used to restart a sequence at any point. So for example, if the duration is 1/8 and we want a repeating sequence of 11 notes, we can use an impulse generator with a frequency of 8/11 because frequency and period are inversely related. Just like patterns, demand UGens can be nested inside of each other for more complex results. So here's a composite rhythmic sequence and a little bit of randomness on the second pitch value. For amplitude sequencing, we can use Tduty to trigger an envelope according to some unique rhythm. Tduty is very similar to Tduty, but outputs its values as triggers instead of sample and hold behavior, as you can see on these two plots. So a little syncopated rhythm for these triggers. And since we're just gating an envelope, we don't need some complicated value sequence, just any positive number is fine. A very analog synth thing to do here is modulate the cutoff frequency with another envelope controlled by the same trigger signal. If we want a chord progression, all we have to do is create some array representing a stack of scale degrees, add it to the base degree value, taking advantage of multi-channel expansion. I'm also going to slow things down because 8 chord changes per second seems a little fast. Deconst is worth highlighting here, I think. It outputs values according to its second input until the sum of those values would exceed the threshold represented by the first value, at which point it truncates the last value to fit. So in this specific case, we'll get 0.75 5 times in a row, which adds up to 3.75, and then the sixth value is shortened to 0.25. We're going to wrap this in a dseq so that the whole process repeats. And then some finishing touches, an LFO for the envelope release, another LFO modulating cutoff frequency, and we'll throw some delay and reverb on the end. So, nice little collection of UGens and pretty convenient, I think, being able to put pattern style logic straight into a SynthDef. Hope this gives you some fun ideas to explore. Shout out to my supporters on Patreon. Thank you all so much for the support. I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. Thanks for watching. See you next time.